I can't believe that after struggling with fertility, that I have a 9, almost 10-month-old baby that is doing amazing. And I had such a crazy experience with my pregnancy and birth, which is why I've been MIA for a while. I've been popping in here and there, and I'm just trying to adjust to motherhood. But I wanted to come and share my birth story. I had severe preeclampsia and I delivered my son at just 30 weeks. He had a 47-day NICU stay, recovering from a C-section, going back and forth to the NICU every day, pumping every 2 hours around the clock. It just all was incredibly stressful. And I really think that therapy can be very helpful in the postpartum period, even if you have a normal birth. Having an objective person to talk to, someone trained in postpartum mental health, would have made a huge difference. Just having an hour a week to process everything would have done wonders. And that's why I want to tell you about BetterHelp, the sponsor of today's video. BetterHelp makes starting therapy easy and convenient. You can connect with a licensed therapist through phone, online messaging, or video chat. After filling out a questionnaire, you'll get matched with a therapist in under 48 hours in most cases. And you can switch therapists at any time at no extra cost. BetterHelp has over 30,000 therapists covering a wide range of specialties. Whether you're recovering from a difficult birth, adjusting to motherhood, struggling with anxiety, depression, or trauma, BetterHelp has experts available to support you. Visit betterhelp.com/Saving Sheila to take a quick assessment, or enter Saving Sheila during sign up for a special discount off of your first month of therapy. Around 26 weeks, I started having elevated blood pressures. And so they started to have me track them at home at that point. So I would track them twice a day and then log them in the MyChart app. And they talked to me about preeclampsia even earlier in pregnancy, that, I was at higher risk for it because it was an IVF pregnancy. I was overweight going into pregnancy. And I also have 2 autoimmune conditions. I have rheumatoid arthritis and I also have Sjogren's. And I also have SSA and SSB antibodies as a result of the Sjogren's. So with all these things, I was at higher risk for preterm labor and preeclampsia. So, at 26 weeks, when I started having an elevated blood pressure, I didn't have any history of hypertension. So I just kind of thought, oh, maybe it was just like a one-off thing. But my doctors were very on top of it. And so at that point, they were like, okay, we got to track it every day. So I track it every day. And then 2 weeks later, my blood pressure ended up spiking. It was like 150 over something. And so I immediately was told to go to labor and delivery. And they kept me overnight. And so after a couple hours of being there, my blood pressure went completely back down to normal with no medication. I was having headaches though. I was having really bad headaches. And I just felt really tired. I had really bad headaches. And so while I was there, the headache did go away. So they discharged me home. They told me, hey, if your blood pressure elevates again, we're going to bring you back and you're not going to be able to go home until you deliver. And so I don't think at this point it was fully clicking that I could be in the hospital for 10 weeks or so. It wasn't even clicking to me. So it's not that I didn't take it seriously, but they also didn't tell me to be on bed rest. And I was a stay-at-home wife and stay-at-home mom. So in my mind, I wasn't doing anything too strenuous. But in hindsight, I probably would have taken it even more easy. I know they say it's not good to be completely sedentary, but I just think I would have not been, going as many places, doing as many things. I think I just would have just tried to chill a little bit more than what I did. And so discharged home, came home. And then at this point, I was seeing my doctor and maternal fetal medicine doctor twice a week. So the next week when I go in, everything's kind of okay at 29 weeks. At 30 weeks, I go to the doctor. That Wednesday. Actually, back up. I go to the doctor that Monday, to the maternal fetal medicine doctor, the high risk doctor. When I go into the doctor, they tell me that my blood pressure is fine that day, right? Great. But I had a headache. And they were like, I don't like that headache. We're going to send you to get some blood work done because we want to see like where your protein levels are at and everything. So I went over to labor and delivery. They did some blood work. They hooked me up to the fetal monitor. Baby was doing great. Baby has been doing great the entire time, right? And so after that, I go home. And then on Wednesday, I have my next appointment, my regular OB appointment. When I go in on that Wednesday, my blood pressure was a little bit elevated. And when I say a little bit elevated, we're talking about like 130/90. So higher, but not crazy high. My doctor was like, you have to go to labor and delivery right now. And I'm like, okay, but it's only like 130/90. I'm thinking to myself, like, it's not crazy. And then she's like, well, you have to go over to labor and delivery. She was like, you need to get steroid shots. She's like, I want you to get those so that if we have to deliver early, the baby's lungs will be more developed. And even at this point, I'm still like, I don't understand, because like when you say severe preeclampsia, I'm thinking the blood pressure is going to be like way off the charts. And then also I'm like, well, why can't I just have some blood pressure medication and go home? Because who wants to be at the hospital for weeks? And this is what I really want you guys to understand. If you don't know anything about preeclampsia, I thought that preeclampsia meant your blood pressure gets high and it stays high. For me, it wasn't like that. My blood pressure would go up and down and up and down. So I remember 130/90, right? So I'm like, all right. So I go over to labor and delivery. Now, mind you, I did pack my hospital bag, which everyone thought was crazy for getting everything together. And I'm so glad that I did. So if you potentially are going to have preterm labor, or even if you're not, it's nothing wrong with getting everything together early. If you're that person, do it, because it made me feel way more comfortable that I had my hospital bag packed. I think it was in my car, matter of fact. So my husband was able to just go to my car and grab it for me. I had not only my hospital bag packed, I had the nursery ready. I had everything that I would need for the baby within the first 2 weeks. Mind you, I haven't even had my baby shower at this point. But something said when I was in the hospital the first time in 28 weeks, I said, let me just get everything that I would need within the first 2 weeks so that if the baby, is delivered early. In hindsight also, though, if you have a baby at like 30 weeks, they ain't coming home right away. So that's the other part. But anywho, so I go over to labor and delivery. I get checked in. Now, 130/90 was what it was when I was in the doctor's office. And this is all in the same building. Like, this is the medical office building. And it's literally like a 3-minute walk down the hallway to labor and delivery. When I get over there and they get me hooked up to the monitor, so all within probably like 15 minutes, I'm checked in, I'm laying down, everything. My blood pressure was 180 over something. 180. Like, it went up that quickly in a matter of 15 minutes. I felt so horrible. So immediately they put me on magnesium. They gave me the first steroid shot. I had one the first day, one the second day. They gave me blood pressure medication, and they also gave me something for my headache. I think like Reglan or something for my headache. And the bed, they had padding around the bed because they were afraid that I could have a seizure and I could hit my head. I was not allowed to get up and go to the bathroom. I was not allowed to shower for several days. It was wild. So this was on Wednesday. I was not allowed to shower until Friday night, and we'll get to that in a minute. So the next couple days, I'm in the hospital. So at this point, I'm being told that they're going to try to get me to 37 weeks. And then the next is Wednesday. Thursday comes, they tell me, we're going to try to get you to 34 weeks. Because all night, my blood pressure was like going up and going down, even on medication. So Friday comes, and Friday was actually pretty good. My blood pressure was kind of stable, normal, all day on Friday. So at this point, I'm thinking like, okay, I got a pretty good chance. I only got to make it a month. Like, it had already like finally set in that like I ain't going home. I'm going home until I have a baby. So I was like, okay, like I can do this. I can chill out and we can do this, right? So at this point, I'm like, okay, so, I'm going to be good. Well, no. My high risk doctor comes in, who I didn't like at the time, but now I like her. And I said, okay, like, doc, what's going on today? What y'all got for me today? Because y'all keep changing it, right? And she was like, you want me to be honest with you? And I was like, well, of course. And she was like, you're not going to make it through the weekend. She's like, I'm off this weekend, but I don't expect for you to make it through the weekend, if we're being honest. Now mind you, my blood pressure is fine. They just finally let me shower. I was able to eat on Friday because I couldn't eat either. I wasn't allowed to eat until Friday. So I'm like, okay. Now mind you, another thing that was happening is that each day, so on Thursday and Friday, each day I gained like 7 pounds because they would like walk me. They would let me get out of bed just to go weigh myself, and then I would go lay back down. And I was gaining like 7 pounds, and all I was getting was fluid and no food. So at this point, I'm like, okay, like, well, she's a little bit pessimistic. And so, time goes on, and, I was able to shower and everything. So I'm comfortable at this point. And sometime like Friday, like Saturday morning in the wee hours, like around probably like 4 a.m. or so, I went to the bathroom, and when I came back and put the cuff back on the machine or whatever, my blood pressure was like 160 over something. And I was like, oh boy. So the nurses were busy doing whatever they were doing. So I went back to the bathroom one last time, like maybe an hour later. And I sat on the toilet, and I remember just praying, and I said, okay, God, like, I know that they're probably going to want to deliver me today. And I'm like, please just watch over me, watch over my baby, guide the hands of the people who are going to be working on me, the nurses, the doctors, everything on me and my baby, and just keep us safe. I went, laid back down in the bed, hooked myself back up to the blood pressure machine. So, of course, here the nurse comes, and she's like, I got to call your doctor. She comes back. She says the doctor said that they want us to put you back on magnesium. So that means no more getting out of bed. So I'm like, okay. And so when they did rounds in the morning, actually, I think it was actually like maybe even before rounds. Right when there's 2 high risk doctors, the other one that's not my primary one came in, and he was like, okay, we need to go ahead and deliver you. He's like, baby is still doing good. He's like, we want to deliver you because the preeclampsia isn't getting any better. It's getting worse. We've been looking at your blood pressures over the evening, and they've been going up again despite medication. So at this point, it's in the best interest to deliver. And he was like, okay, so how do you feel as far as a C-section versus a vaginal delivery? And I was like, can I do a vaginal delivery? And he was like, well, yes. And mind you, I did ask my OB on Wednesday when I was originally admitted. I asked her about that. And what they both said was that because I was only 30 weeks, that I was going to labor for a very long time, that it could be days. And they were like, realistically, being that I had elevated blood pressures, that it was very unlikely that I was going to make it to delivering him without my blood pressure going up to a dangerous level. They said that I could try if I wanted to, but they were like, the second that your blood pressure gets too high, we're going to have to do an emergency C-section. And then you're going to be put to sleep. Baby's going to come out asleep, and, that's what it's going to be. Or we can do a C-section now, and you'll be awake. You'll have less medication. Baby will have less medication. And so I ultimately opted for that because those 2 doctors told me that, as well as the doctor, because my regular doctor was off as well. So another doctor in the practice which was actually my doula's doctor. So I felt comfortable because she had kind of vouched for her. She kind of said the same thing, that like ultimately, especially if you're not planning on having a lot of children, that, you know, if you do have a second C-section, that's fine. But it just made more sense. So that's ultimately what I decided. And so I was able to hear him when he came out. The epidural and the whole C-section experience was not what I expected. When I watch videos on YouTube, I feel like everyone's always like awake with full face of makeup, and for some reason, I imagine that I would just feel it from that I wouldn't feel anything from here down, and I would be fully bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. It was not like that for me at all. I was like going in and out, and they just kept telling me, Sheila, you got to stay awake. You got to stay awake. You want to hear your baby. You want to hear your baby. And so I was fighting to stay awake. And so I remember just hearing him cry for the first time. And I was so happy. And I'm just like, okay, like he came out crying like he's alive and he's going to be okay. And so, of course, the NICU team was there. So I don't really have a whole lot of recollection of the OR besides hearing him cry. I kind of feel like I kind of blacked out a little bit. And then next thing I know, like my husband and the nurse brought my baby over to me. And I look so rough in this picture, so I don't even know if I want to show you guys this picture. But he brought him over to me, and I was able to give him a kiss and tell him I loved him. And then he was rushed up to the NICU after that. And I remember my husband saying, like, hey, do you want me to stay with you? Do you want me to go upstairs? And I will say I was very comfortable with my hospital and everything and the care I was getting. So I was like, okay, like, you know, go with the baby, like, you know, make sure he's okay. So shortly after he walked out, they're doing their stitching up or whatever. And I kept telling them, I'm like, I'm really nauseous. And they're like, we gave her, I hear them saying like, we gave her nausea medication. We gave her a little bit more. And next thing I knew, I threw up all over my face and my hair. And I don't remember anything after that until I woke up. I woke up in the recovery room, and next thing I remember is that the nurses are like, you know, they're doing stuff around me. And I remember just looking over, my husband's back upstairs at this point, and I remember looking over at him, and I'm like, there's something coming out of me. So I had, and my husband, like the look on his face, I had a clot the size of a dinner plate that came out, and I just hear the nurses saying like, hey, like, so shortly after this, I don't know what happened. They must have got me cleaned up and everything. And then I was asleep. My baby was born at like 10 o'clock in the morning, and I did not wake up until it was dark outside, because I looked over at the window and it was dark. So it had to be pretty late. It had to have been like 9, 10 o'clock or something when I woke up. So I ended up having 2 blood transfusions, and that night lactation came, and I was still kind of groggy and out of it. They came and they helped me pump for the first time, and I think I got like 15 milliliters the first time I pumped. And then but I didn't remember any of the settings, and I think that was the one thing that I did a lot of research on breastfeeding, but I didn't really do any research, or I didn't retain any information about like the settings on a pump, right? So I wasn't allowed to go see my baby for about 36 hours, because I had to wait 24 hours to be off of magnesium, because I had to be on it after birth. And then after I came off of it, then they were like, hey, we need to do another blood transfusion. So it was about 36 hours before I was able to go to the NICU and see him. So it was hard. Like, I was in so much pain. So I only pumped one time the first day. The second day is when I started pumping. So once I was moved down to like the regular labor and delivery floor, I started pumping more, but I wasn't really getting anything. So I ended up finally getting lactation to come back, and we got the settings right. And then I was kind of off to the races from there. This is like 2 days later, because the whole second day I'm like pumping, not getting anything. And then the third day lactation came back, and then they helped me figure everything out. So my son was in the NICU. He was doing amazing. He was on oxygen. He was 3 pounds, 12 ounces. And they said that basically he was kind of a feed and grow baby. So he really didn't have a whole lot of issues. He did have a VSD, which is very common with premature babies. But actually, we just found out last week that is completely closed, and they're like, it's almost, you can treat it like it never happened. And his was very, very small, so we were very lucky there. But he's so healthy and happy, and he's doing so well. He is definitely a lot bigger than I thought he would be at this point. He's already like 20 pounds, and it's so crazy. Like, he's bigger than a lot of full-term 9-month-olds, and he's caught up with his weight. He's 50 percentile on the full-term charts now, so he's just doing amazing. So the whole NICU experience was super hard. I think I tried to sleep there a couple of times, but the majority of the time he was there, I spent most of the day at the NICU, and then I would just go home at night, go to sleep, and I would come back. And he was my first child, so I was able to do that. But it was definitely hard. I never wanted to like leave him there. And the first time that I left the hospital, my husband drove me home in my car. And I remember when he opened the back door to put my bags in, the car seat was there, like this empty car seat. And it just hit me like my baby is supposed to be coming home with me. And so that was really hard. And I just cried and cried and cried. But it got easier. It got easier as the days went on. And then he came off of oxygen. He had to go back on oxygen twice, I think. And that was kind of hard. Just watching your baby like have a hard time breathing. But he was a trooper, and he just kept getting better and better over time. He was gaining weight. He was doing everything he needed to do. And really what kept him there the longest was just learning how to eat by mouth, which isn't uncommon with premature babies, especially a 30-weeker. So, but we made it. We were able to go home on like half fortified bottles and half nursing. And so now he's exclusively breastfed. He's nursed almost exclusively, except for like the random bottle here or there if my husband has them or something. But yeah, pretty much that's it. We're so blessed that it worked out so well. I would definitely, just a few tips for you guys. I would highly recommend to make sure you're very comfortable with your doctor, especially as an African-American woman. We know it's a lot of stuff that can happen with birth, right? And we don't always get the treatment that we should in these situations. So make sure that you find a doctor that you're super comfortable with. And don't be afraid that if you go to a doctor and you don't like that doctor, that you have to stick with them. No. Audition another doctor. Find someone you're comfortable with, because this is birth is like no joke. And especially if you have a C-section, like you're having a major surgery. Like there's so many things like that can go wrong, that you want someone who is knowledgeable and that you're going to feel comfortable with, and that you feel is on top of things. I've heard so many people with preeclampsia that had strokes and just all types of stuff, kidney failure. Like, it is no joke. If they tell you you're at risk for preeclampsia, please, please, please take it seriously. So finding a doctor you're comfortable with. Also, I highly recommend getting a doula. I had a doula starting at about 25 weeks. She came out to my house every week. She taught me about all the different, she helped me make a birth plan. She taught me about all the different, the terminology. She explained it, broke it down to me, let me know what my rights were, what my options were. She went over breastfeeding with me. and she was just a support for me. And so she came, even I think 8 or 12 weeks after I had him, she came out to my house every week. And so it was such a great thing to have someone check on me. Because, you know, when you have a baby, like everybody wants to see the baby, and everybody is, you know, rightfully so, trying to make sure the baby is doing great. But it can be really hard, especially if you go through a premature, preterm labor experience. Having someone who's checking on you, making sure you're okay, that's really important. And also, like the sponsor of today's video, BetterHelp, they're a great resource as well to find a therapist. But get your support pieces in place. Get your therapist in place. Get your doula in place. My doula also helped in terms of, with me and my husband, helping my husband understand what he can do to help in the postpartum period. So all these things are really important. A therapist can also help you and your partner figure out like what things you need. They can also help you learn how to communicate to others what you need, right? And so that was super important. And lastly, I would highly recommend that if you plan on breastfeeding, that you take a breastfeeding class or you consult with your doula about breastfeeding, because if I would have went into breastfeeding not knowing anything about it and all of the possible things that can come up, and not having the support, I don't think that I would still be nursing. So definitely highly recommend those things. So thank you guys for watching as always, and I will see you guys soon for another video. Bye.